Welcome back, learners. I am Dr. Shantanu Saurabh, Assistant Professor, DAV PG College, Banaras Hindu University. To our course, Rudimentary Principles and Practices of Managerial Economics, Module 4, Lecture number 17, which will talk about law of demand. And the topics which we are going to cover in this lecture will be determinants and factors affecting demand, concept and definition of law of demand, assumptions of law of demand, tabular and graphical representation of law of demand, and reasons for the downward slope of the demand curve. Moving further, the first topic in this presentation will be determinants or factors affecting demand. In this intricate world of economics, the determinants or the factors of demand serve as the bedrock upon which the market dynamics function. These are built influencing the decisions of both buyers and sellers. Determinants ranging from economic to social and psychological factors shape the landscape of demand. Some of the key determinants are as follows. The first and the most important factor which affect demand is the price of the commodity. As the fundamental factor which we have already discussed in the previous lectures is that price of the commodity as the fundamental factor, changes in the price of a commodity directly impacts its demand. When price decreases, the demand tend to increase and vice versa. And price is the center point, is the most important determinant of demand. Next point is income. The purchasing power of consumers influenced by their income levels significantly affect the demand. As the income increases, the consumer can afford to buy more goods or products and demand more goods and products, leading to an increase in demand. The next point is price of related goods. The price of related goods here means that substitute and complementary goods play a crucial role in shaping demand. There is direct relation between the price and quantity demanded for substitute goods. For example, tea and coffee. If the price of tea will increase, the consumers or the customers will shift to coffee. So there is direct, you can say, relation between the price and quantity demanded. Whereas inverse relation exists between the two in the case of complementary goods, considering the example of car and petrol. Next point is taste and fashion. The evolving trend and consumer preference influenced by factors such as advertising and social media has an impact on demand. It has a major impact, you can say, on demand. Goods that align with the current taste and fashion trend may experience higher demand, which means with the goods which are trendy, which are in fashion, normally have more demand. On the contrary, the goods which are less in fashion or less in taste are less in demand. The next is distribution of wealth. Disparities in wealth distribution among consumers affect their purchasing power and consequently demand. A more equitable distribution may lead to increased demand for various goods and services. The next point is related to geographical conditions. Factors such as climate, geography, infrastructure also play a very crucial role in the demand patterns. For example, the demand for winter clothing may be higher in colder regions. The next point is religious ideas and thoughts. The cultural and religious belief can also affect the consumer behavior and preferences, impacting demand for certain goods and services. The saving tendency, or you can say the mentality of Indian population. Consumer propensity to save or spend affects demand. High saving rates may lead to lower immediate demand for goods and services, and vice versa. The population, the next point, changes in population size and demographic structure can have significant effect on the demand. Growing populations may increase demand for various goods and services. The next is the trade cycle. The economic cycle includes period of expansion, recession, recovery, impact consumer confidence and their spending patterns, which influence the demand for various commodities. The next is the quantity of money, a very important point. Changes in the money supply can affect inflation rate, and consequently, finally, it will affect the consumer's purchasing power and their demand for specific goods and services. So the quantity of money also plays a very relevant role. The next point is expectation of future prices. Anticipated changes in future prices can influence current demand. Expectations of price rise may lead to higher demand in the present and vice versa. For example, if there are rumors that from day after tomorrow the price of any product is going to increase, the demand for that specific product today will rapidly increase, and vice versa. So these are the determinants, the intertwined and dynamic paint a comprehensive picture of a multifaceted forces that shape demand in the marketplace. Understanding and analyzing these determinants are very essential for businesses, policymakers and economists in navigating the complexities of economic decision making. As we have already discussed in the previous lectures, that the most important function of managerial economist is decision making. So these factors will help to analyze, to understand and to estimate the demand and act accordingly. Moving ahead to the most significant and important topic of this session, law of demand. What the law of demand says is that the law of demand is a fundamental principle in economics based on diminishing marginal utility analysis, which we have discussed in the previous lectures, which says that as the consumption increases, the utility decreases. The price of a good or service decreases, the quantity demanded of that goods or service increases, and vice versa. As we have already talked, that as the price will fall, the demand for that specific good will increase, and vice versa, and keeping other things as constant, that is ceteris paribus, such as income of the consumer, preference, price of related goods, population, etc. In simple words, or to summarize, when price go down, people tend to buy more of a commodity, and when prices go up, they usually purchase less. There is inverse relationship, the most important thing, there is inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded, and the slope of demand curve represents the same. The demand curve slopes downwards from left to right, which we'll be discussing in the upcoming diagrams, indicating the negative association between the price and the quantity demanded. This is the summation, that there is negative relation between the price and the quantity demanded. Moving ahead, a change in demand occurs when one or more of the determinants of demand changes, and it is expressed in the following equation. The demand for X commodity is function of price of X commodity, price of related goods, substitute or complementary, the income of the consumer, the taste and preferences of the consumer, the population, expected income, expected price, advertisement costs, government policies. So these are the factors which are going to influence the demand of that specific product or services. Moving ahead to the definition of law of demand, in the terms of Marshall, there is one general law of demand. The greater the amount to be sold, the less should be the price at which it is offered in the order, that it may find purchasers. In other words, in the simple words, the amount demanded increases with fall in price. When the price falls, the quantity demanded increases and diminishes with a rise in price. On the other definition, according in the words of Samuelson, the law of demand states that people will buy more at lower prices. When the prices are comparatively less, the people will purchase more and buy less at higher prices. When the price will be high, they will purchase lesser. And ceteris paribus, which means keeping other factors constant. It means that demand is the function of price. Very important thing, demand is the function of price, or we can say that the quantity demand depends upon the price of the commodity by keeping other things as constant or ceteris paribus. Law of demand is a qualitative phenomena. This is one of the, you can say, drawback also of law of demand. It does not signify the exact quantity of change of quantity demanded for the consumer, as it simply shows the direction of change and direction of the change in the demand, increase or decrease due to change in the price, that is decrease or increase in the price of the commodity. The biggest drawback of this is quantification of demand, which we have mentioned due to change in the price is not possible. So the exact quantity we are not able to identify, we are only able to identify whether there will be increase or decrease in the price or the demand of the related goods which we are talking about. Now moving ahead, there are certain assumptions to this law of demand under which it can function. The first is rationality. The consumer must make decisions to maximize their satisfaction, which means they must be rational enough to understand the market and take decisions which are able to satisfy their needs and provide maximum satisfaction. The next assumption is that diminishing marginal utility. The law of demand is based on the concept of diminishing marginal utility, which explains that as we increase the consumption, the utility decreases. The time frame, the pattern of demand may vary differently in the short and long period or term. The fixed income, there should be no change in the income of the consumers. The income will be constant. Related goods, the price of related, substitute or complementary goods should remain unchanged. Next is normal goods. The commodity bought should be normal goods and not any luxurious goods. The next assumption is that future prospect, there should not be any prospect of increase of commodities, price increase of commodities in the future. The price of the commodity should remain constant. The taste and preference, there should be no change in the taste, in the preference, habit, fashion, likes and dislikes of the consumers. The perfect competition, there should be perfect competition in the market and each consumer must have perfect knowledge about the availability of various products in the market. The next assumption is the other factors, there should not be change in the total wealth of the consumer or no change in the population and ceteris paribus. All other factors need to be constant for the application of this law. So these were the basic assumptions based on which this concept of law of demand is going to be applicable. Moving ahead, now I am representing you the tabular representation of law of demand. As you can see in this table shows relation between the price of per kg oranges and its demand. As the price of the oranges is reducing, the quantity demanded is increasing, and vice versa, representing the inverse relationship. That is very important, the inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. Just have a look on the table. When the price was 5 rupees per kg, the quantity demanded was how much? 5 rupees. When the price was 5 rupees, the quantity demanded was 5 kgs. When the price fell from 5 rupees to 4 rupees, the quantity increased to 10. And when the price fell from 3 rupees, the quantity demanded was 15 kgs. And when the price fell to 2 rupees, the quantity demanded was 20 kgs. And finally, when the price reached to 1 rupees, the quantity demanded was 25 kgs, which means as the price is falling, the quantity demanded is increasing. And the same is represented in this diagrammatic representation, which is negative slope, and as the price is falling, the respective demand is increasing of oranges, which we have already represented in the point A, B, C, D and E. Just a brief explanation of the diagram which we have discussed. On the x-axis, quantity demanded is shown whereas on the y-axis price of the oranges is shown. As the price is reducing from 5 to 1, the demand for the oranges is increasing from 5 to 25, as you are able to see in the table as well as the diagram. When all the points A, B, C are joined together, it gives rise to demand curve, which we have seen in the last diagram. The slope of the demand curve is negatively moving downward from left to right, indicating a inverse relationship, again I am repeating, between the price and quantity demanded. When the price of the oranges is reducing, the consumer shifts from A to B, B to C, C to D, D to E, thereby increasing the demand for oranges. To summarize, whatever we have discussed is that as the price will fall, the demand will increase, and as the price will increase, the demand will fall. Moving to the next topic is that reasons for the downward slope of the demand curve. There are various factors responsible for downward slope of the demand curve, indicating the inverse relationship which we have talked in the law of demand between the price and the quantity demanded. The first reason why downward slope of the demand curve exists is that law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of demand is based on the concept of law of diminishing marginal utility. This law states that as the individual consumes more of a good or service, the additional satisfaction or the utility derived from each additional unit decreases, which means as we increase the consumption, the utility will gradually fall. As a result, the consumer are willing to pay less for each successive unit of good. Therefore, as the price of the goods decreases, consumers are willing to buy more of it to attain higher level of satisfaction, which we have discussed in the concept of law of demand. The consumer will stop purchasing or consuming any further commodity where marginal utility becomes equal to the reducing price of the commodity. So this is the first point, which is law of diminishing marginal utility, and it represents the reason for downward slope of the demand curve. The next is the income effect. Another reason for downward slope of the demand curve is the income effect. When the price of the good decreases, consumer effectively experience an increase in the real income. This allows them to purchase more of the goods, assuming that their income remains constant. Conversely, when the price of a goods increase, consumer experience a decrease in their real income and may buy less of that good. The next point, change in the number of consumers. When the price of the commodity falls, many other consumers who were not consuming that specific product earlier will now be ready to consume it, thereby increasing the demand for that specific commodity due to the reduction in the price. As a result, the total market demand will go up. The next is the substitution effect. Substitution effect also leads to the demand curve to slope from left downward to right. When the price of a good decreases relatively to the price of the substitute goods, consumer may switch from those goods to the now relatively cheaper goods. This substitution effect leads to an increase in the quantity demanded of the cheaper good. Conversely, when the price of the good increases, consumer may switch to alternative goods, leading to a decrease in the quantity demanded of the more expensive good. The next is different uses. Any good may have multiple uses or different uses, and changes in the price can influence the demand for each use differently. For example, if the price of petrol decreases, the consumer may use more petrol for both transportation and recreational activities, leading to an overall increase in the demand. The psychological effects. When the price of a commodity falls, people favor to buy more, which is natural and psychological. Therefore, the demand increases with the fall in prices. And the last point, tendency to satisfy unsatisfied wants. Every individual has some or the other unsatisfied wants. When the price of the commodity falls, the demand for it will increase as people who were earlier unable to buy can buy. Due to this behavior of human beings, the demand curve slopes downwards. So these factors collectively contribute to the downward slope of the demand curve, which shows the inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded as stipulated by law of demand. So I'm just providing you a gist whatever we have discussed in this lecture. We started from the factors or the determinants which affect demand. We talked of price of the commodity, the income of the consumer, the price of related goods, the taste and fashion, distribution of wealth, geographical conditions, religious ideas and thoughts, saving tendency, population, trade cycle, quantity of money, expectation of future prices, and these were the factors which were affecting the law of demand. Then we talked of the concept and definitions of law of demand, where we tried to understand the inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. These were the factors which we discussed. We discussed the definition of Marshall and Samuelson. We also discussed the assumptions, that was rationality, diminishing, marginal utility, time frame, fixed income, related goods, normal goods, future prospect, price of the commodity, taste and preference, perfect competition, other factors, and ceteris paribus. And then we talked about the tabular representation, where I tried to show you the impact of price and the quantity demanded in the case of oranges. Then I tried to show you the graphical representation of the demand, law of demand, the explanation. Now at the end I discussed the reasons for the downward slope of the demand curve. The first reason was law of diminishing marginal utility, income effect, change in the number of consumers, substitution effect, different uses, psychological effect, and tendency to satisfy unsatisfied wants. So altogether in this session I tried to throw light on the determinants, on the factors of demand, on the understanding of law of demand, and why demand curves slope downwards. I tried to give you basic reasons for it. So this was a gist of law of demand, and in the upcoming sessions we'll be talking more about demand. Thank you for patiently listening the lecture.